All right, let's get to the recruiting news. As we head down the stretch here, it's hard to believe, but the early signing period is just a couple of weeks away, just a few weeks away. So where does LSU stand right now as we hit the home stretch?
Yeah, this is crunch time for Ed Ogeron and his staff. There's a lot of big recruits out there that are planning to sign in the early period. One of them, namely Maason Smith, five-star defensive tackle from Louisiana, is probably the biggest name that we're expecting to sign early, at least in terms of him making his decision. And then from there, they have about probably 3 to 5 spots in all likelihood that are open. It'll be probably a recruiting class crunch time. They'll get together as a staff and really kind of see if there's any players that maybe need to move on potentially. We always kind of see that type of attrition, whether it be natural or whether it be a mutual parting of ways or what have you. But those will be some conversations that they have had and are going to continue to have down the stretch, just based on senior films and things like that. You could see some guys, at least this year, maybe not even sign early just until their senior years get underway if they are going to play in the spring. But, for the most part, this class at least feels pretty locked in. Just over the last couple of weeks, we reached out to a lot of the recruits in the class to kind of gauge whether they're going to sign early, whether they're enrolling early and doing all of those things. And for the most part, everyone's planning to sign early, at least out of the commitment. So that's a good thing for LSU. You always want to get your class fairly locked up early on, and that's something they're going to have the chance to do, it seems like. And when you look at the guys they've finished with as of late, Sage Ryan, Derek Davis Jr., Jack Besh, and Matthew Langlaw, and those guys, those are ones you expect to sign and to join that class. For a lot of the longtime commits, it's the same story. There will be some guys that they're going to have to fight off late pushes from other schools. You look at Deion Smith, one of the top receivers in the country. I saw JoJo Earl on Friday night, and he said other coaches are hitting him up, but he's locked in, he told me, and he's enrolling early. So there's a lot of moving pieces down the stretch here, but for the most part, it's all eyes on, I would say, Maason Smith. And then as the spring gets closer, we move past the early signing period, you look at some of those bigger targets like Corey Foreman and Tristan Leigh and guys like that they want to round out the class with.
Tristan Leigh to me seems like the guy that you almost have to have because of where you sit right now, Billy, on the offensive line. I know that at one point it seemed like he was an LSU lean, and recently I've seen some chatter come out that maybe Oklahoma has gained some steam on LSU, and they're in the conversation now as well.
Yeah, I think with Tristan and Ohio State is a dark horse. I mean, they're recruiting at a pretty insane clip. I think one thing with Ohio State is the depth chart. He's always been fairly cognizant of that. That's one thing he's always mentioned at LSU is that there's playing time right away for him. I think you graduate Austin Deculus potentially would if he wants to move on or not. That's another discussion, I guess. But the early playing time is there on that offensive line, and probably more so than anywhere else, quite frankly, in the Power Fives and in the country. LSU, has had some offensive line issues. They need Tristan Leigh. He is. They have Garrett Dellinger committed as a lone offensive lineman right now. But when you talk about a program-changing offensive lineman, it's Tristan Leigh. I mean, he's really blown up over the last year and a half. He's got that frame that you want. He's got the athleticism. He's trim. I would say for the most part, and he would be an instant impact guy for that offensive line and somebody they have to have.
Billy embodies, I guess. Billy, whether they get Tristan Leigh or not, isn't this going to have to be an off season where they're going to go shopping in the transfer portal for offensive linemen?
I would think so. It's going to be difficult to kind of do that depending on where their spots end up. If they're at 22 right now, if we see some attrition and, like I said, maybe 3 to 5 spots left in this class, that's a position that you've got to feel like they're going to address, and they've tried to. Eric Wilson, the Harvard transfer, who, for as touted as Liam Shanahan was, Eric Wilson was an All-American, 4-team All-American in the preseason before Ivy League shut things down. So he's going to Auburn. He was one they were looking at. There are others out there that they're going to have to go after and try to address with. And I think this year more than ever, you're going to see a lot of movement in the transfer portal, because I think this season for a lot of players is just an eye opener in terms of maybe what they want, what they didn't get in the recruiting process in terms of promises or how things have panned out. And it's been a weird year just in general. So I think there's going to be options for them out there, and I would have to think that they're going to explore every avenue to address the offensive line again with the transfer portal.
All right, so Billy, if you do get grad transfers in, do you think LSU leaves some available spots in this signing class to be able to do so?
Yeah, I would think so. Probably 1 to 2. I don't think it's going to be an over-the-top deal. I mean, unless the way it would work, I guess, is if you get Maason Smith right now, as the class stands, it's 23. Then, could you get Corey Foreman and Tristan Leigh, or that puts you at 25. So if you've signed some of these guys and they do have a spot available based on them not filling out the last class to get to 26, that's kind of where that one spot would come from. And then do you see the attrition that you leave spots open for that to happen? That can be on the board as well.
Billy, basketball starts tomorrow for LSU. Starts today for a lot of other teams. In fact, we're watching Ohio State right now. But how do you feel about the team, about the early schedule? They had to pull out of the event in Lincoln. They're going to play a couple of games in St. Louis, including the game against St. Louis. That'll be on Saturday. How do you feel as they get ready to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any person around this program, you've got to feel good. I mean, it's a team that has super high expectations. Top 4 preseason pick to be right there again for a conference title. They're going to have to really come together, I think, more so than even last year's team to overcome Kentucky and Tennessee, the usual suspects to win the league. But they have depth. They have different pieces. I think once Charles Manning is back fully healthy, that's going to be a big boost. The good thing for LSU is they're going to get a chance to see what they have relatively quickly with some of their other wing players, and at that spot for Charles Manning. And then with the new matchup zone that they're going to, how does that work? Brian Penn Johnson and Josh Gray and the other bigs, how do they fit in with that scheme and change how the way LSU is played defensively? If LSU comes together defensively, this team's going to be pretty tough to stop from winning the SEC. That was really what held them back, I felt like, last year. And Will Wade addressed it, decided to make a change with his scheme. And he's got the players to do it. He's got the talent to do it. Cam Thomas is going to be somebody that probably ends up on the All-SEC team along with Jamonte Smart and Trendon Watford. I think the X factor for the most part for this team is Darius Days. Does he take that next step that everybody's been waiting on him to take, to be a really, really solid SEC player and a potential dark horse to land on an all-SEC team? If he does that, the sky truly is the limit for this team. They've got all the pieces in the world to make a run in the NCAA tournament.
Billy, what do you think this rotation will look like as far as amount of players that are going to play significant minutes? Because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the roster. I'm like, man, I can make a case for 10, 11 guys to get minutes. What do you think that rotation will settle into?
Well, the good thing is I get one cop-out answer, and that Josh LeBlanc isn't going to be in it for a minute. So I think 10 to 11 is probably the safe number. And sometimes when you get into the meat of the SEC slate, you even see that go down, and it becomes more of an 8 to 9 man rotation, as tough as that is to believe with the depth that they have. But when you look at some of the players like Jalen Cook and Eric Gaines, for example, do they live up to those preseason expectations that Will Wade has and has talked them up? And, do they become, instant rotational players, or do they take a little bit longer to actually settle in to SEC play especially? And do they kind of fall back into more of a spot duty situation? Milwaukee Wilkinson, does he have the strength to hold up over the course of the SEC schedule? He's certainly got the size. But with Darius Days, with Trendon Watford, with Charles Manning, Josh LeBlanc, and Andre Hyatt, how does he fit in when you get into SEC play? So I think 9 to 10, 9 to 11 is probably that sweet spot when they do get it all finalized.
Billy, we appreciate your time. Enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Billy Embody
Thanks,
from
Billy.
Go 247.